Is science a myth? I know it's a bit of a weird question, but I'm reminded by the moral philosopher Mary Midgley that it's a question that we can ask. And the reason why we can ask this question is that myths are things that we live by. They are stories we tell ourselves to make sense of the world. And one of them has to do, well, one of the myths that we live by has to do with science. Let me read a line from Mary Midgley's book, Myths That We Live By, where she says, "Ever since the prestige of physical science has soared so high, a variety of doctrines on all sorts of subjects have used scientific imagery to gain authority, which rightly belongs to science proper. Because they sound technical, people receive their symbolic message as literal truth. Moreover, even in ideologies which do not build on genuine scientific ideas, the real scientific notions are often not clearly distinguished from extraneous ones. As a result, many of the favorite fairy tales of our age, the myths that actually shape our thoughts and actions, are ones which owe their force to having appeared in scientific dress." It's an interesting argument, but basically what she's saying is, look, science, hugely popular, and it's important and real, but because it was so successful in the physical sciences, everyone thought, well, if we use the same scientific method for all spheres of life, well, then everything will be better too. But it actually doesn't quite fit in every sphere of life. Like if you're going to ask the question, what is right and wrong, really basic one, in what sense can scientific method do that? You can quantify how many people think something is right and wrong, but does that determine truth? No. You can maybe measure responses to rightness and wrongness to things, but again, it's just not quite the same thing as knowing what is right and wrong. It's maybe interesting to know a statistical analysis of people's opinions over time, the probability that people will answer X or Y or Z or something else given a certain problem. Certainly all of that can be known. But science itself, the scientific method itself, very valuable, very useful, not necessarily useful in every category of thing. The physical causes that science uses, that people like David Hume and others have discussed, really then create this, if that's all we believe, then it creates this thing where, well, as Mary Midgley somewhere says, we kind of push out all other sets of causes. But what are the cause of doing something right is to fulfill your purpose. So your purpose is to do good. It's a final cause in the old language, and therefore you do good. Okay, that's pretty straightforward to say it that way. But what physical cause caused you to do good, except for that you were made, let's say, with the final cause, your purpose anyways, was to do good. So how do you locate that purpose? Well, you could say, well, maybe there's a physical cause. So you look at brain chemistry, DNA, genetics, etc. Then you fall into these dicey problems by saying, well, these genetics are better this way, this biology is better this way, and it becomes a very strange way of thinking about right and wrong and purpose. Well, I think Mary Midgley is right that while physical sciences are wonderful and great, and we should all be all for them, if we think that's the greatest thing, the most important thing, we begin to use the method of physical sciences for all of the other sciences. And the effect of that is essentially to describe every field of knowledge, whether that's morality or joy or happiness or purpose or origins or formalities or whatever else. You begin to apply these physical causes to them, and it not only does it not make sense, it sort of creates this myth that like everything is simpler than it is. There's nothing deeper than that. A tree is a tree. There's no final cause to a tree. There's no deep origin to why there are trees. It's simply that they are, and they have a biological function that you can quantify, describe, and delineate through a scientific method, which in and of itself is great for that particular end, but there are other ends of knowing. And all that to say, I think most of us, like when I teach, for example, I just find that most of us are so locked into quantification, not quality. about subtraction and addition, not the thing itself. To be able to measure and grasp all the details of a physical structure rather than thinking through the meaning of the intelligible structure of a thing. If all of this sounds weird to you, it's probably because you live by the myth of science, namely that scientific explanation is the thing that can explain everything else, and there's no deeper causes to reality than this. And I suppose then the final challenge is love science, love its proper domain, but know that there are more things in heaven and earth than can be described by the modern scientific method. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to subscribe, hit the bell, whatever you do on the platform you're watching it on. Thank you.